Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. I'm sitting down with Roger Cohee from the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee, right?
That's right.
And he's the Fitchburg Historical Society guest today, talking about farming. And we just talked with the past part of farming. And now we're going to kind of move into the present and maybe the future on what farming looks like here in the city of Fitchburg.
Okay. Well, like I say, the first dairy farm came into the city in 1880. And but today, Fitchburg, which is 33 square miles in size, Fitchburg became a city in 1983 from the township of Fitchburg.
Okay.
And I must say that with the city being actually about 50% rural and 50% urban, it certainly presents some challenges for the city planners as well as the residents.
Right.
And that certainly is something that I think that is really unique for a city in Wisconsin.
Being half and half like that. Yeah.
To give you an idea of what's going on, the number of acres and whatnot that we're working with right now in the ag part of the city, we've got about 11,000 acres of actual farmland.
Okay.
Now that 11,000 acres, when you look at the actual amount that's tillable, is about right around 10,000 acres.
Okay.
Now, that 10,000 acres it makes up about 140 landowners. Now, we're talking, that's a big number, it sounds like, but we're talking landowners that have got, 10 acres or clear up to several hundreds of acres. Also, which is interesting about the way farming is going right now, is they're out of that tillable acreage, over 50% of it is rented. In other words, the person living on the farm is not actually doing the farm.
Okay.
There's another farmer that is coming in and
taking care of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And right now we have 9 different renters, 9 different businesses that come in and work on this land, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
The other thing is the dairy part of the city.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned the dairy came in 1880, and since that time, of course, it grew. And when I was living on the farm and raised there, we were milking dairy cows. We were milking, maybe I think we were about 25 to 30 head of cattle. And our cattle was registered Holsteins, and we sold the offspring as well as the milk. And then that was pretty good. During that period of time, this is an interesting fact, is that there were about 90 so dairy farms in Fitchburg.
Okay.
And we had roughly about 3,000 head of cattle.
Wow.
Right in
just
that,
here in Fitchburg?
Just here in Fitchburg.
Wow.
Dairy cows.
Just dairy cows.
Just dairy cows.
Okay.
Today, we have 2 dairies.
Wow.
And right around 275 to 300 dairy cows in the city.
In the city.
A huge swing.
Yeah, I'd say.
That, of course, that swing is over a long period of time, which is 60 years. But it points out the major change in Wisconsin, or Fitchburg, I should say, when you look at Wisconsin being a dairy state.
Yes, right.
And so you ask the question, well, why did this happen, or what has happened? Well, basically, what has happened is that Madison being close, the offspring or the children didn't want to take the farm over. They could go work from, 8 to 5 and not have 7 days a week. So that is what happened.
Okay.
So
makes sense.
Anyway, you've got the dairy.
Yep.
You got the crops that are going on right now. We do have a couple other interesting things that are happening right now. We have the start of hemp growing. Now, we've all heard a lot about the hemp.
Yep.
We do have one grower in the city that is starting to work with that.
Okay.
Another venue that we've got interest in the rural area where people are talking about having a venue which would be like a wedding barns and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
The city has also set up what they call is the Fitchburg Ag Route. If you look along the Badger State Trail, that has been designated as an agricultural area for development for agricultural type of businesses, if such. I mean, now we're talking about maybe cheese store or something along that line. If you travel down that Badger Trail, you'll also find, historically, the city has put up historical signs,
Down
plaques,
the actual bike trail, right?
right down the actual bike, and it will be okay, here is where the Dunn farm is, or here's the Froman farm, and whatnot.
Yep.
Which I think is really a good thing to help educate
Definitely.
the people.
Yes.
So we've got that. If I take one step further now, let me just tell you a little something about Wisconsin and how Fitchburg fits into the state.
Okay.
Wisconsin sells about $88 billion worth of agricultural industry. Now, the agricultural industry produces $88 billion for the state.
For the state. Okay.
Of that, about half of that is dairy.
Okay.
Now, obviously, Fitchburg doesn't fit into that.
Right.
But you get outside of this area and you get up in the Green Bay area or any of these other areas where you have huge amount of dairy going on.
Right.
So the ag business being $88 billion, half of it dairy, is really quite an astounding thing. Wisconsin, of course, ranks second in milk production next to California.
Right.
But it ranks first in cheese production.
Yeah. Always have the good cheese.
Always got to have good cheese, yeah. And we've got plenty of cranberries for around Thanksgiving because we're number one in cranberry growth.
Yeah.
But then our central sands part of the state, where potatoes grow, we're number 3 in the country
Really?
on potato growth.
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Another interesting fact is that one farmer today produces enough food and fiber for 168 people. Now, back in the 60s, that number, when I was working on the family farm and everything, that was about 28.
Oh, so way less.
So technology improved in genetics for breeding and everything has really come along.
I'd say.
One last little bit of information of how this all fits is that for every 12 jobs in Wisconsin, this is kind of interesting, for every 12 jobs in Wisconsin, one of them is associated with ag industry.
Okay.
So
1 in every 12 is
associated
ag
with
in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
We have a
kind
lot
of
ag
interesting.
jobs here. Yeah.
And there's statewide, there's over 400,000 ag jobs. So
Lots of stuff.
So really, if you look at Fitchburg ag industry, it's important most definitely to the city.
Yeah.
Those acres and those different venues of income in the ag part of Fitchburg brings in someplace between $8 and $9 million a year.
Okay.
So in other words, the gross sales of that, which is kind of an important economic benefit.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'd just say one last thing is that the ag industry is important really not only to the city, but to the state and to the country. And also, we are a part of a big export part of ag. So it's come a long ways.
And it's really changed, like you said, the dynamics have changed from the amount of dairy we had to what we have now, which is a lot less, but now we're going into more like, now hemp is starting to be done here, so it's big changes, and I'm sure more changes coming in the future with the egg industry.
The technology is just going at warp speed right now.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's huge. Well, Roger, thank you very much for coming on today. You've told us a lot of facts, a lot of tidbits from past to present, and I really appreciate it. And maybe we'll have you on someday down the future and talk more about some farming for us.
Be glad to.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching Talking Fitchburg.